Hey guys, how are you today? Quick rant before we dive into today's chaos. As some of you might have noticed, YouTube's algorithm has decided I'm not special anymore. Shocking, I know. So now if you don't like, comment, or do a little backflip in the algorithm's honor, this video might just vanish into the void, never to be seen again. Seriously though, even a hi or "this is wild" in the comments helps way more than you think. It tells YouTube, hey, people actually like this channel. Maybe don't hide it from everyone. That can really help push my videos out to a wider audience, not just to my subscribers. So if you enjoy these stories and want to support the channel, that's the best way to do it. Now grab a drink, get comfy, and enjoy the drama. You won't want to miss this one. From the time I was young, my biggest dream was always to have a happy family of my own and to become a father one day. I know that for some people this might sound cliché or perhaps even a bit old-fashioned, but for me, it was something deeply rooted in my heart. Growing up, I was fortunate enough to be raised by two incredible parents who had a relationship that I can only describe as truly special. My parents' relationship was a beacon of love and stability, something I admired and aspired to emulate. They met in high school, and even from those early days it was clear to everyone that they were meant for each other. As a child, I noticed how they always treated each other with a deep sense of respect and kindness no matter the situation. They weren't just married, they were best friends who shared a bond that was evident in everything they did. Seeing this day in and day out made me want that for myself. I didn't just want to get married to anybody one day. I wanted to find my own best friend, someone with whom I could build a life full of love, laughter, and mutual respect. And more than anything, I longed to be a father, to have children who would grow up in the same kind of loving environment that I did. Because of my strong desire to have a meaningful and lasting relationship, I was always very careful and selective when it came to dating. I wasn't the kind of person who would jump into casual relationships just for the sake of it. I knew what I wanted, and I was determined to find someone who shared the same values and goals for the future. In high school, I did have a girlfriend, and I truly believed that she could be the one. I put my heart into that relationship, doing everything I could to make it work. But alas, the relationship did not work out. I guess sometimes people can grow in different directions, and that's exactly what happened with us. We simply grew apart, and eventually we had to accept that we weren't meant to be together. When I went to college, I wasn't really expecting to meet anyone special. I had decided to focus on my studies and personal growth, figuring that if the right person came along, it would happen naturally. I wasn't in any rush, and I certainly wasn't actively seeking out a relationship. But as life often has a way of surprising us, out of nowhere, Bonnie walked into my life. Bonnie was unlike anyone I had ever met before. She is the kind of girl who would immediately catch everyone's attention the moment she enters a room. There was always something about her that was simply magnetic. She had this incredible energy. She was free-spirited and full of life, and her happiness was contagious. It wasn't just her looks, though she was undeniably beautiful. It was her personality that truly made her stand out. She had a way of making everyone around her feel alive, and people couldn't help but be drawn to her. Because of this, I never thought anything would happen between us, since she and I were so different. Bonnie seemed so out of reach, like someone who belonged to a different world. I was content to just be her friend, enjoying the times we spent together in our group of friends without expecting anything more. But then after several months of just being friends, Bonnie called me one afternoon and confessed that she had a crush on me and that she wanted to go out on a date. I will admit it took me a moment to process what she was saying, because it was so far from anything I had imagined. Bonnie, the girl who could have had anyone she wanted, had feelings for someone like me. It was a moment that completely changed the course of my life. Of course, our first date went really well, and I remember being on cloud 9 afterward. We kept going on more and more dates, and eventually Bonnie became my girlfriend. In the beginning, as with most new relationships, I saw Bonnie through rose-colored glasses. Everything she did seemed perfect to me. I was so infatuated with her that I couldn't see any flaws, or if I did, I brushed them off as insignificant. But as time went on and we got to know each other more deeply, I began to notice a few things that gave me pause. What you might call red flags. They weren't necessarily deal breakers, but they were traits that made me uncomfortable and caused me to question certain aspects of our relationship. One of the first things I noticed was that Bonnie had a tendency to look down on anyone who disagreed with her, whether they were right or wrong. She was very confident in her opinions, which wasn't a bad thing, but she took it to an extreme. If someone had a different perspective and chose to voice it, Bonnie would immediately get defensive. Instead of engaging in a healthy discussion, she would start calling them out, often labeling them as stupid or ignorant. This trait made social situations with her quite tense at times. I still remember so many of my friends getting uncomfortable with the way Bonnie behaved towards them. Another thing that became increasingly apparent was her mood swings. Bonnie's moods could change in the blink of an eye, and these shifts were often extreme. There were days when she was full of energy, ready to take on the world. She would ask me to skip classes and go out partying with her, sometimes with people we barely knew. During these parties, she would do things that were frankly outrageous, things that left me feeling uneasy. But then out of nowhere, her mood would shift completely. She would become withdrawn and distant and ask me to take her back home. She would then lock herself in her room for days without any explanation. These emotional ups and downs were hard for me to navigate. Bonnie's temper was another issue that became more evident as time went on. She could go from being calm to incredibly angry in a matter of seconds. When she got angry, it was intense. Her anger would escalate quickly, and she would sometimes lash out physically. I remember times when she would punch her fist into a wall or kick a trash bin in frustration. On a few occasions, she came dangerously close to hurting someone. These outbursts were frightening, and they made me realize that there was a side to Bonnie that I hadn't seen when we first started dating. As much as I cared for Bonnie, these red flags were becoming harder to ignore. As we continued to date, I found myself torn between the girl I had fallen for and the reality of the person she was showing herself to be. The incident that finally pushed me to confront Bonnie about everything wrong with our relationship happened due to an incident at a movie theater. You see, my guy friend had invited both Bonnie and me to watch a movie with him and his girlfriend. I thought it would be a nice double date, so I asked Bonnie if she wanted to join us. To my surprise, she immediately refused, saying she didn't like my friend's girlfriend. When I pressed her for a reason, she couldn't give me anything concrete, just that she didn't like the girl. This wasn't unusual for Bonnie. She often got into feuds with people without any legitimate reason, and she never really explained her dislikes. So I didn't take her refusal too seriously. I told her that I was going to watch the movie anyway, and she was welcome to come if she changed her mind. What happened next was something I never saw coming. Imagine my surprise when, during the movie, Bonnie walked into the theater looking for me. At first, I thought she might have changed her mind and decided to join us. But then, out of nowhere, she came up to me and started screaming at me in front of everyone. She accused me of sleeping with my friend's girlfriend, claiming that was the real reason why I had insisted on coming to the movie with him and his girlfriend, even though she did not want to go. She also claimed that, clearly, I preferred other girls over her, and this was why she had come here to confront me. I was completely blindsided. Her outburst was so loud and aggressive that the entire theater turned to look at us. My guy friend and his girlfriend were understandably shocked and offended. They tried to defend themselves and me, but Bonnie wasn't having any of it. She loudly told them to stay out of it, insisting that this was between her and me. The situation quickly escalated, and I could feel the eyes of everyone in the theater on us. It was incredibly embarrassing. I didn't know what to do, so I just got up and walked out of the theater, leaving the movie unfinished. Bonnie followed me all the way to my car, still yelling at me, calling me a cheater, and refusing to let it go. Up until that point, I hadn't said a word. I had let her vent, hoping she would eventually calm down, and then I could explain myself. But as I watched her continue to scream at me, something inside me snapped. I had reached my limit. I turned to her, and for the first time I yelled back. I told her that I was done with her, that she had crossed a line this time, and that I didn't want to be with someone who treated me this way. I remember telling her, with all the frustration and hurt that had built up over the months, that I couldn't be with an abuser like her. The words came out with more force than I had intended, but they were the truth. I realized that Bonnie had been emotionally abusive throughout our relationship, and I had ignored the warning signs for too long. Her outburst in the theater was the final straw, the moment when I realized that I couldn't keep making excuses for her behavior. I knew I deserved better than this. I went on to tell her exactly how embarrassed and hurt I was by her accusation. I couldn't believe that she would even suspect, let alone publicly accuse me, of something so outrageous, sleeping with my own buddy's girlfriend. It felt like a deep betrayal of trust, and I told her in no uncertain terms that she had no right to come into that theater and accuse me like that in front of everyone without talking to me first. As I spoke, I could see the realization dawn on her face. Bonnie's eyes widened, and I watched as she started to backtrack, trying to take back what she had said. Her voice softened, and she began to apologize. But by then the damage was done. I shook my head, feeling a mix of disappointment and frustration. I told her to get out of my car, that I didn't want to drive her home. I needed space to clear my head and to distance myself from the chaos that had just unfolded. But as soon as those words left my mouth, Bonnie broke down completely. She burst into tears, her whole body shaking with the intensity of her sobs. For a moment, my anger wavered. Watching her fall apart like that, I couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy. This was someone I had cared about deeply, and seeing her in such distress triggered an instinct to comfort her. As she cried, Bonnie kept apologizing over and over, saying she didn't want to lose me. She started talking about how her brain sometimes gets all jumbled up, and how she doesn't always know how to control her thoughts or emotions. Her voice was filled with desperation, and it was clear that she was terrified of losing me. Confused by what she was saying, I asked her to explain what she meant. But instead of giving me a clear answer, Bonnie kept repeating that if she told me the truth, I would leave her. She talked about how she felt like she had to keep her other self hidden, and that made me even more confused. I didn't know what to make of it, but I knew we couldn't keep going in circles. I told her she had no other choice. Either she told me the truth and let me decide if I wanted to stay with her, or she walked out of my car and we would end things right then and there. It was a difficult ultimatum, but I needed to understand what was really going on. After a few moments of hesitation, Bonnie, still weeping, finally confessed something that took me by surprise. She told me that she had bipolar disorder, something her mother also suffered from. She had apparently been hiding this information from everyone, as she was ashamed of it and wished she was just normal. Hearing this, I was taken aback. I definitely didn't expect her to have BPD, but also, at that moment, so much of her behavior started to make more sense. The extreme mood swings, the outbursts, the unpredictability. It all seemed to align with what I knew about bipolar disorder. Bonnie went on to explain that whenever she stopped taking her medication, her mind would fog up and she would start behaving irrationally. She said that wasn't who she truly was and that she hated how her disorder made her act. I asked her why she would stop taking her meds if she knew it made her worse, and Bonnie told me, with tears streaming down her face, that she just wanted to live her life like everyone else, and she hated the fact that she couldn't. She would get tired of feeling sick, tired of the side effects, tired of the constant reminder that she had to depend on medication just to function. Her words were filled with pain and frustration, and as I looked into her eyes, I could see how much she was struggling. It broke my heart a little to see her like this, to realize how much she had been silently battling. At that moment, I felt a mix of emotions: sympathy, sadness, and a deep sense of conflict. On one hand, I now understood that her behavior wasn't entirely within her control, that it was part of a larger struggle she was dealing with. But on the other hand, I couldn't ignore how her actions had affected me, how difficult it had been to be on the receiving end of her outbursts and erratic behavior. Although I was also young, I already knew that loving someone with a mental health condition, like bipolar disorder, required a lot of understanding, patience, and commitment. And I wasn't sure if I was ready for that. However, I realized that I loved Bonnie and couldn't just walk away without at least trying to make things work. Despite everything, there was a deep connection between us, and I didn't want to throw it away without giving her, and us, a chance to improve. So we sat down and had a serious discussion about what needed to change for our relationship to continue. I told her that the only way we could move forward was if she committed to seeing a therapist who specialized in bipolar disorder, so she could learn to better manage her emotions and behavior. I also emphasized that she needed to take her medication consistently, without any more lapses. The conversation wasn't easy. It was emotional and raw. Bonnie could see how serious I was, and I could tell she was scared of losing me. But to her credit, she understood where I was coming from and promised to do whatever it took to get better for us. I made it clear that this was her last chance. Over the next few months, Bonnie kept her word. She began seeing a therapist who helped her navigate the complexities of living with bipolar disorder. She also made sure to take her medication consistently, recognizing that it was essential for her well-being and for our relationship. It wasn't a smooth or easy journey by any means. There were still tough days for us, but gradually Bonnie started to learn how to manage her feelings more effectively and to be kinder to herself. As Bonnie made progress in therapy and began to stabilize emotionally, our relationship improved significantly. There were things she had always held back before, but now she started to let me in. The more she opened up, the closer we became, and our relationship got deeper and more meaningful. When we graduated college, it felt like the natural next step for Bonnie and me to move in together. We were committed to each other and knew that this was what we wanted for our future. We both had our own successful careers, and we managed to create a balanced life together. We were diligent about saving and investing our money with the goal of eventually buying our own house and getting married. It felt like life was on track. We were building something solid and meaningful together. Then one day, Bonnie discovered that she was pregnant. This news took me by surprise. I hadn't really thought about becoming a father just yet, but after taking some time to process the news, I found myself feeling okay with it. We were both earning well, and I knew we could afford to take care of a baby. More than that, I started to embrace the idea of starting a family with Bonnie. It felt like another step forward in our journey together. But Bonnie didn't feel the same way. She was deeply conflicted about the pregnancy. She even broke down in front of me and confessed that she wanted to terminate the pregnancy. As much as I was excited about the idea of having a child, I believed that it was ultimately up to her to decide what to do with her body. I was upset, of course. I had already started to picture our future with a baby, but I knew I had to support Bonnie no matter how much it hurt. I told her that I would stand by her decision, whatever it was. We scheduled an appointment at a clinic for the procedure, and I tried to be as supportive as possible, even though I was hurting inside. However, when the day of the appointment arrived, Bonnie decided not to go at the last minute. She was overwhelmed with guilt and confusion. She told me that the thought of getting rid of the baby was too much for her to bear. I did my best to console her, holding her as she cried, and reassuring her that if she decided to have the baby, I would do everything in my power to be the best father I could be. I promised to be an equal partner in parenting, to share the responsibilities, and to ensure that she didn't feel burdened by it. In the end, she agreed to go through with the pregnancy. Bonnie's pregnancy journey was anything but easy. She was overwhelmed with fear and anxiety, constantly worried about losing our baby because of her BPD. This is why she stopped taking her medications, as she believed it could affect the baby. As a result, her mood swings became more intense during her pregnancy. Her anger flared up frequently, and she was generally very difficult to live with during that time. There were days when it felt like we were back to square one, dealing with the same challenges we had faced before she started therapy. But I had made a promise to her that I would never leave, and I was determined to stick by those words no matter how tough things got. During the 4th month of her pregnancy, Bonnie confided in me about the nightmares she was having frequently. She was terrified that I would leave her to raise our baby alone, especially since we weren't legally tied together by marriage. Hearing this broke my heart, because it was the farthest thing from the truth. To ease her fears, I immediately went out and bought a ring. I proposed to Bonnie that very week, letting her know that I was all in, that I was here to stay. Our wedding happened quite quickly after that, but it was a beautiful, intimate ceremony. Both sides of our family were present and were thrilled for us. The day our daughter Mary was born, I was right there in the delivery room standing beside Bonnie as she brought our little girl into the world. The moment Mary was born, the nurse handed her to me, and I couldn't hold back my tears. I looked at her tiny fingers and delicate little legs, and I was struck by how absolutely precious she was. Mary's birth brought a new sense of purpose into my life. It wasn't just about Bonnie and me anymore. It was about our little family. I was committed to making it work, devotedly. However, after we brought Mary home, I noticed a shift in Bonnie that I couldn't ignore. She seemed very distant and disconnected from our daughter. She never wanted to touch the baby and would only hold Mary when it was absolutely necessary, like during breastfeeding. Even then, it was clear she was doing it out of obligation, rather than affection. I tried to be understanding. I knew that childbirth and the early days of motherhood could be overwhelming. I wanted to give Bonnie the space to rest and recover, so I took on as much of the household responsibilities as I could. I cooked her favorite meals, encouraged her to sleep in, and made sure she didn't have to lift a finger around the house. I was more than happy to care for our daughter, but it was impossible to ignore Bonnie's growing irritation and coldness. Whenever Mary cried, Bonnie would glare at her with a look that I could only describe as resentment. I began to worry that she might be experiencing postpartum depression, a condition I'd heard about but didn't fully understand. I gently suggested that she talk to a therapist about how she was feeling, hoping that professional help could make a difference. But Bonnie would snap at me, telling me to mind my own business and shut down any further conversation on the topic. Then, one morning about a month after Mary was born, I woke up to find Bonnie gone. Her side of the bed was empty. She was nowhere to be found in the house. At first, I tried not to panic, thinking she might have gone out to clear her head or grab a coffee. But as the hours passed and her phone remained switched off, my anxiety grew. I called her parents and friends, hoping she had decided to visit one of them, but no one had seen or heard from her. A sinking feeling settled in my stomach. Something was very wrong. Desperate for answers, I searched through our bedroom trying to find any clue as to where she might have gone. As I rummaged through her drawer, I came across a diary tucked away in the corner. I hesitated, knowing it was a violation of her privacy to go through the diary, but curiosity got the best of me. I flipped through the pages and discovered that Bonnie had been writing secretly about her daily struggles, anger, and fear. I guess this was probably what her therapist had asked her to do. But as I was about to close the diary and put it back, my eyes accidentally landed on a page that stopped me cold. There, written in Bonnie's handwriting, were the words, "I wish I could kill Mary." I froze, unable to process what I had just read. My hand shook as I reread the sentence, hoping I had misunderstood. But deep down, I knew what those words meant. My wife was clearly struggling far more than she had let on, and she had reached a point where she saw our innocent daughter as a threat, or worse, as something she needed to get rid of. I felt a mixture of fear, sorrow, and a deep sense of urgency. I called the police and reported Bonnie as missing, explaining the situation and the alarming diary entry. Then I reached out to our families, alerting them to what was happening. Her parents were understandably distressed and deeply concerned about their daughter. Eventually, the police located Bonnie at a motel. She admitted that she had fled home to prevent herself from harming Mary. Her parents took her in and sought immediate professional help to address her mental health issues. Over the weeks, Bonnie confided in them that she wanted a divorce from me because she felt she couldn't handle being married or living with a baby. This news left me heartbroken. I attempted to communicate with her, hoping to understand her perspective and find a way to resolve our issues. But Bonnie had already made up her mind. Her parents also supported her decision. So, in the end, I moved forward with the divorce and took full custody of our daughter. This all happened 5 years ago, and since then I've been raising my daughter Mary as a single father, and we have come a long way. I've never brought up Bonnie to my daughter, feeling that she's still too young to understand, and fortunately Mary hasn't asked many questions about her mother yet. However, today I am on Reddit because this week, out of the blue, Bonnie reached out to me. Since the divorce, my ex-wife hadn't attempted to contact me at all, and I had also respected her privacy. Over the years, I had in fact changed my number and moved to a new place to start fresh with Mary. Given all this, I was quite surprised to receive her call. To sum it up, Bonnie said she's in a much better place in her life and is now ready to meet Mary. I was taken aback by her words and reminded her of how she had been the one to walk away from us, so she couldn't just waltz back into our lives. Firmly, I told her I wasn't interested in reintroducing any drama into my daughter's life and wanted to protect her from potential instability. Hence, I wasn't going to allow her to meet my daughter until she was at least old enough to decide for herself. However, Bonnie argued that this was not fair and I should give her a chance. I reminded her how she never gave us a chance and left me high and dry with a 1-month-old baby to take care of all by myself. Bonnie then pressed me, saying that she was dating someone new who had apparently discovered that she had a daughter. She implied that it would reflect poorly on her if she didn't make an effort to reconnect with us. Bonnie proposed that we meet just once, at least to discuss the future and see where things could go from there. I was pissed hearing this and told her that I did not care what her boyfriend thought of her, and that me and my daughter were not her toys to play around with. Despite her continued pleas, I stood my ground and asked her not to reach out again. Since then, I've been feeling a bit guilty. Hence, am I the asshole for not letting Bonnie into our lives again? Not the a-hole. She didn't just leave OP. She abandoned her newborn daughter without a single word, knowing full well that OP will have to pick up all the pieces alone. That's not a mother who had a bad day or made a mistake. That's someone who made a deliberate decision to walk away from her family. The fact that she's only reaching out now because her new boyfriend found out about her child tells everything OP needs to know about her intentions. She's not coming back out of love or remorse. She's doing it because she's embarrassed and wants to clean up her image. OP needs to protect his daughter's peace. OP has built stability after years of chaos and should not let guilt or manipulation undo that. And now let's hear community's opinion. Absolutely not the a-hole. It's honestly disgusting that she's trying to use your daughter as a prop to impress her new partner. She abandoned a 1-month-old baby, disappeared for years, and now suddenly claims she's in a better place when it benefits her socially. No, parenthood doesn't work like that. You don't get to check out for 5 years and then show up when it's convenient. Your daughter doesn't remember her, and that's a good thing. She doesn't need to be exposed to someone who might destabilize her emotionally just to save face for a woman who walked away. You're doing the right thing keeping her out of this. I'm genuinely impressed with how patient and compassionate you've been through all of this. You've shown empathy towards someone who hurt you deeply, but you've also drawn firm boundaries. And that's exactly what a good parent does. Bonnie's mental illness explains her behavior but doesn't excuse it. Until she can show years of stability, therapy, and genuine accountability, not performative regret triggered by her boyfriend, there's absolutely no reason to risk your daughter's safety or emotional security. Keep doing what you're doing. You've built a calm, healthy life for your little girl, and that's priceless. Not the a-hole, not even slightly. You've been the rock in your daughter's life from day one, and that's something your ex-wife can never undo. Her sudden reappearance after 5 years of silence, timed perfectly with her new relationship, isn't coincidence. It's manipulation. She's not thinking about your daughter's well-being. She's thinking about her reputation. If she truly cared about reconnecting, she would have sought therapy, written letters to your daughter, or taken legal and psychological steps to prove her readiness, not just called out of nowhere demanding access. Stay firm. Your child's stability and safety come before her mother's image issues. Update 1. Thank you everyone for your responses. I am glad that a majority of you agree that I should not let my ex-wife anywhere near my daughter. I definitely made the right call. I also plan on finding out who shared my number with Bonnie since this was a breach of trust. Update 2. So, I finally found out that it was my own mother who had shared my number with Bonnie behind my back. When I asked her about this, she confessed immediately that she had stayed in touch with Bonnie over the years. She said she had always felt sorry for her and believed that Bonnie and I were endgame. That's why she had shared my number, thinking it might lead to a reconciliation between Bonnie and me. I was furious when I heard this. I told my mother how delusional her thinking was. I reminded her of the countless nights I had spent alone struggling to take care of my daughter without any support. I made it clear that Bonnie's BPD and her mood swings had severely impacted our lives. I told her how I had no intention of reintroducing chaos into my daughter's life. My mother did apologize, but I told her that if she ever gave Bonnie any more of our information, I would cut her out of my life, and, by extension, my daughter's life as well. My father was also upset with my mother and fully supported my decision. Update 3. For everyone asking, me and Mary are doing okay. Bonnie tried reaching out a few more times after our last conversation, but I didn't answer her calls or listen to her voicemails. I've since blocked her number and am focusing on continuing our lives as we have been. I'm determined to maintain the stability and peace we've worked so hard to build for Mary and myself.